Good evening and welcome to this evening's Development Management Committee meeting. I am Joan Grime, Councillor for Culcheth, Glaisbury and Croft, and I will be chairing the meeting. Due to the current coronavirus pandemic, the Council have taken steps to follow restrictions and health guidance in relation to social distancing, whilst balancing the needs of carrying out our regulatory functions. This is the 16th meeting of this committee that is being held remotely. The agenda for the meeting will run as per the usual format. The meeting is being broadcast live to the public, who have had the opportunity to make written representations. However, there will be no input from the public during the meeting. This is in line with the Coronavirus Act of 2020, Section 78. Present at the meeting are 10 elected borough councillors plus officers of Warrington Borough Council. I will now ask all those present to introduce themselves. At the same time, will councillors confirm that they have received the agenda and reports on the applications and have a copy in front of them. We have no additional written representations or update notes. So I will ask you to introduce yourself and confirm you have the agenda in turn. First of all, Councillor Barr.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Bob Barr. I represent Lymm North and Thelwall and I have the agenda before me.
Thank you. Councillor Carey.
Good evening, Councillor Peter Carey representing Fairfield and Howley Ward, and I confirm that I've got all the relevant agenda and papers in front of me.
Thank you. Councillor Flaherty.
Good evening, Councillor Jean Flaherty, Fairfield and Howley Ward, and I confirm I have all the papers and agenda in front of me.
Thank you. Can I check, has Councillor Friend managed to join us?
Yes, good evening. I'm Councillor Graham Friend, representing Pulton North, and I confirm I have the agenda in front of me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome. Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, good evening. I'm Councillor Tony McCarthy. I represent Rixton and Woolston. I have the agenda in front of me and I've read it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Yes, Councillor Les Morgan representing Latchford West. I have the agenda and all the documentation in front of me. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Mundry.
Councillor Karen Mundry, Latchford East. I have all the agenda and all the documents.
Thank you. Councillor Parish.
Yes, Councillor Steve Parish, Chapelford and Old Hall, and I've got all the papers and I've read them all.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Good evening, Judith Wheeler, Councillor for Appleton, Hatton, Stretton and High and Walton. Confirm that I've got the agenda in front of me and I have read the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Councillor Steve Wright representing Busey and Whitecross, and I have all the documents, agenda and everything in front of me.
Thank you. I'll also ask the officers to introduce themselves. Democratic Services.
Jenny Cordwell, Senior Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Legal Services.
Paul Clisby from Legal Services.
Thank you. From Planning.
Nikki Gallagher, Development Manager.
Thank you. And Transport.
Thanks, Chair. Mike Taylor, House Development Control.
Thank you very much. So we come to the agenda, item 1, that's apologies. Have we any apologies, Jenny?
No, no apologies have been received.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest which they have in any item of business on the agenda no later than when the item is reached. Will you members please indicate on the chat as agreed if there are any interests you need to disclose? Right, no one seems to have any interest and I have no disclosable interest either. We come to the minutes of the last meeting. Has any member seen a problem with the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of January, which have been circulated to you? No? I confirm then that the minutes of the DMC meeting held on the 20th of January 2021 are a correct record. Agenda item 4 is planning applications, and we have just one item on the agenda today. This is land adjacent to the Poplars, Cotswold Road, Warrington, and it is application number 2020-37982. It is a full planning application. The proposed erection of 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings, that's 4 dwellings in total, with car parking and amenity garden space, along with the formation of a new vehicular and pedestrian access from Cotswold Road. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Can I invite the Development Manager to present a report?
Thank you, Councillor Grime. The application relates to a vacant piece of land to the north of the Poplars Public House on Cotswold Road. Immediately to the north of the site there is a footpath, Cotswold Place, which provides a link from Cotswold Road to Lansing Avenue and provides direct primary pedestrian access to the front of the properties to the north, which are orientated to face the footpath. The wider area is primarily residential in nature, although there is a local commercial parade to the southeast. The application proposes 4 dwellings in 2 pairs of semis orientated towards the north. Off-street parking is provided within the scheme. The application is before members because it is on council-owned land, and 4 objections have been received. The application was advertised by neighbour notification letter and site notice. Details of the 4 objections received are contained within section 4 of your report, but can be summarised as the principle, design, amenity and impact on parking. As members are aware, all planning applications must be determined in accordance with local planning policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. The relevant local planning policies contained within the core strategy are within section 7 of the report. The key issues associated with this development are discussed in section 9 of the report, and for the purposes of this discussion I will focus on the principle of the proposal, design and character, highway matters and amenity. The application relates to a vacant brownfield site in a sustainable location within an established urban area, and therefore the development is considered to be acceptable in principle, subject to other plan policies. The application proposes 4 dwelling houses fronting onto Cotswold Place. The construction is brick and render with tile roof, which largely reflects materials utilised in the surrounding area. The orientation of the properties respects that opposite on Cotswold Place and would enhance that footpath, maintaining openness when introducing planting to enhance the environment. To the immediate front of the dwellings will be a driveway shared by all 4 dwellings. Car parking will be located to the side of each property and meets with the standard requirements. Properties are 2-storey, which is largely reflective of the scale within the locality. Traditional pitched roofs are the principal characteristics, although one of each pair also incorporates a park gable. This provides additional interest and variety whilst reflecting the character of these existing bungalows, which are located at either end of Cotswold Place. Consideration has been given to the amenity of existing residents when assessing the proposal. The interface distances between the proposed properties and those opposite are considered acceptable and would not result in a significant impacts on privacy or overlooking. The scheme, however, does carry the added benefit to provide an increased natural surveillance to Cotswold Place. In terms of future occupiers, particular regard has been given to the potential of noise and general disturbance from the adjacent public house on the amenity of the future occupiers. It was not possible for the applicant to submit a reflective noise survey with the application due to COVID restrictions, which mean the pub is unable to operate as it usually would. However, Environmental Protection are familiar with this site and have been able to use local knowledge to support a package of mitigation that will be a condition of the consent. It is notable that the relationship of these properties to the pub is similar in terms of distance than others in the locality. Members may also be interested to know that two noise limiters were fitted to the Poplars pub as part of an abatement programme in June 2017. Since then, only 1 complaint has been received, and this appears to relate to an isolated incident. Therefore, subject to noise mitigation measures, it is considered that relationship of the pub and associated car parking to the proposed properties is acceptable. In conclusions, for the reasons set out in the report, it is considered that the application is acceptable and should be approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nikki. We have received no additional written representations, just to remind you. So we'll go straight on to inviting comments and questions from members to the officers. Please indicate, as we agreed, if you've got any comments to make or any questions you particularly wish to ask. Right, Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I took the opportunity, Chair, on Friday afternoon to go and look at this site. Within our documentation, I think they're on pages 32, 33 and 34. There are some photographs. One in particular, taken off Cotswold Road, shows you the site, and sadly, it doesn't reflect the amount of rubbish that's been dumped on that site. So I'm not quite sure how old the photograph is. But when I was there, I observed there are now 2 supermarket trolleys. I counted 8 black bin sacks. There was a mattress there, old tyres. So it was in a very, very sorry state. But my question, Chair, again on the photographs, you will see where the picket fence is towards the rear. It comes back to back. It comes back to with Lancing Avenue. Now behind that picket fence, there's a fairly large green space. Doesn't show up too well on the photograph, but if you look on page 32 and look at the bottom photograph and follow the line of picket fence, it goes round to your left. So behind that and up to the fence of the houses there's a large green space where people, I think they've developed their own pathway, no doubt taking a shortcut to the pub. Does this development stay within the curtilage of those wooden picket fence, or does it take in all the green space behind that up to the fence of Lancing Road? That's my question.
Thank you. Nikki, can you answer that question?
So it takes up the entire area up to the rear boundaries with 17 and 19 Lancing Avenue. So if we look at the location plan on page 12,
yeah,
that's got the red line boundary, and that probably illustrates, it's the best illustration.
Yeah. So do we know, Nikki, how near any property come to the rear fence of Lancing? What, as looking at the layout of the houses will be, what will be the distance between the new properties if they're approved and the rear fence of Lancing? What's that space there? What's that going to be, the gap? Do we know?
Is it 19 metres?
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
That was quick.
Yeah, I've got another. I'll come back up. I've got another question if I can. I'll come back after you want, Chair.
Right, thank you. Okay, Councillor Wheeler, have you got a comment or a question?
I've got a question. Thank you. The new access road, which is probably best seen on. Hang on. Page 30. There are no turning, unless I'm reading it wrongly, there's no turning circles in there. So I'm just wondering if any big lorry was going to the furthest property, which I suppose is the one which we'll be backing on, will be nearest Lancing Avenue. How would a large lorry, a delivery lorry, be able to turn? Thank you.
Nikki or Mike?
I think Mike might be the best place to take this one.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, basically, it's quite a constrained site, as you can see from the location plan. Any large deliveries would be expected to deliver and load on street by hand. There is the potential for vehicles such as transit vans to reverse into the site and reverse up to that furthest one. But any larger vehicles and refuse collection as well would be expected to take place from on street.
Thank you. And I think there is a place to put the bins just at where the new access road comes out onto what is it? Is it Cotswold Road? There.
That's right, Chair. There's on the plan on page 30. It's not quite clear, but there's a little rectangular section just at the end of the landscape strip between next to the footway of Cotswold Place, and that's intended to be a bin collection area. So the residents will bring the bins out to that point, and they'll be collected from there.
All right. So does that answer your question, Judith?
Yeah, that Given that there's no turning circle, how wide is this access road? Does it allow two cars to pass, or is it just?
It does, councillor. It's very generous. It's 5 metres wide.
It's just that there is no turning. There is no turning space.
That's it.
Right. Thank you.
I mean, a car would be able to do a 3-point turn in there, or it'd be tight. It'd be a 3 or a 5-point turn. If they can utilise one of the driveways, they'd be able to do it in 3.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, Councillor Friend, have you got a comment or question?
Yes, please, Chair. I very much welcome a development on this site. It's been derelict and wasteland for years. I drive past there regularly. There's no community centre on the site as shown on the map on screen at the moment. Also, I was going to ask the same question as Tony McCarthy, Councillor McCarthy. On page 30, at the very top of the development, there's what looks like 3 trees. And then along the side road, there's what looks like 4 trees. Can I ask, sir, who would own those pieces of land? Who would be responsible for that land in the future? Thank you.
Nikki?
Thank you. So there is a condition related to the maintenance of that space, which the details are to be agreed through condition. Ordinarily, there are a couple of ways to do it. Either the development company would set up a maintenance company to act on their behalf to keep that land in perpetuity, or more likely, more common, is that land would be part of the curtilage of one of those properties in effect. So the responsibility would be given to a particular occupier to maintain the space adjacent to or in front of their property.
Okay, is that all right, Graham?
Okay, so it would be, are we intending to sell or rent these houses out? Do we know that at the time?
As far as I'm aware, the houses are for sale, but I don't have that for definite, Councillor Friend.
So it would be clear in the leases when they were sold who was responsible for what bits?
That's exactly right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Steve Parish, Councillor Parish. Have you got a question or comment, Steve?
Sorry, it was just sorry, Nick, it was just to correct your answer, because Councillor McCarthy had asked about the distance to the fencing of the properties on Lancing, and I think you gave the distance to the houses on Lancing of 19 metres. So to the actual fence is rather less than half that, I think.
Nikki, have you got any comments?
Apologies, I misheard the question. So I answered the question in terms of a separation distance from the property on Lancing Avenue to the proposed property.
Well spotted, Steve.
All right. I reckon about 8 metres though to the fence, something like.
Have we got any other comments from councillors or any questions for officers?
I've got comments, yeah. Les Morgan.
Les? Okay, Les.
I'm referring to agenda item 4, the local representations, and the top bullet point there from the residents that says there should be something from local children rather than more housing. Now, I know this area quite well. You might take it as a joke, but I lived there in my first marriage in that area, and I'm quite conversant with the area. It's lost quite a lot, that area has. It lost a school, Longford Primary School, which made way for Fulton Leisure. So it's also lost a leisure centre. And as Graham Frenzer said, there's no community centre there now. It's lost the community centre. I think, my own honest opinion, knowing the area, this would be better suited for children playground or something like that rather than housing. There is nothing like that in that area for children. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Les. Of course, we've got to decide on the application before us. We can't,
yes, I
don't
know.
think we can think about at this stage what else it could have been and what the local needs are, but it's certainly worth comment. the needs of that whole area are important.
Yeah,
Do you want to make any comments, Nikki?
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, Councillor Grime. We just can only consider the application that's before us.
Yeah, but they are very important points. Councillor Barr, have you got any comments or questions? Councillor Barr.
Hello, thank you, Chair. I do have some sympathy with Councillor Morgan's concern about amenities in the area. I think that when we're looking at applications, then the nature of the place that we're talking about needs to be material consideration. But I also quite accept that that's not the applications before us, and we've got to look at the application before us. And there I agree with Councillor Friend. I think that this is a beneficial bit of infill of what is effectively wasteland, and there's no real prospect of it being anything other than wasteland in present circumstances. And for it to offer 4 attractively designed homes, I think is a planning gain. I can understand the objections of the 4 objectors, but it's interesting now, out of 26 letters sent out, only 4 objections came in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Flaherty, have you got any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I know we are considering this application, but pieces of land such as this are on the Central 6 Community Forum agenda and the Central 6 Delivery Board to become pocket parks, to encourage residents to start growing their own vegetables or growing flowers and having very small park areas. And it would be this would be considered an ideal plot in the middle of those houses. So whilst, yes, the houses that are suggested would fit in and would be a great improvement on what's there now, I still think it needs to be noted that that is something that the community do want, their pocket parks. Thank you.
Yes, another very important point. We do see every bit of free land sort of gradually getting eaten up. And of course, we've got the housing figures to meet, which on this brownfield land is supposed to be a priority, but the considerations of the areas which are losing all their odd pockets of land also need to be considered in the overall scheme of things. That comes down to the local plan and so on, I suppose. Have you got any further comments to make, Nikki?
No, I think you're right there, Councillor Grime. I think the issues that are raised are outside of what we consider tonight. First of all, I think we've got the Central 6 master plan there, and how that will translate to planning policy is something that we need to look into more detail. But I will mention to the planning policy manager that this has been raised tonight.
Okay, thank you. Steve Wright.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a fairly good knowledge of this piece of land. The community centre that was there was a really thriving place, as I remember. Lots of things going on, and there were little gardening projects that were taking place around that. I think Councillor Friend said that the place is in a bit of a mess, and I think that's it's council land, isn't it? So perhaps that could have been tidied up. If the grass had been cut, it wouldn't look as bad as it does. But I do think we are losing these little plots of land, and I agree with what's been said before, that this really could be a nice little play. I know it won't be now because we're not considering that, but we really do need to make sure that when we do own these pockets of land as a council, that we are trying to keep them tidy, keep them clean, and make them amenable and accessible to the public. Then they won't fall into disrepair. I don't know why the community centre went. I don't know the history of that, but it was a really nice place. I remember. It might be 5 or 6 years ago now, but I just think it's, I think we do need to bear in mind that these are little precious gems in our communities, and we've lost schools around there which has been built on. We've lost the community, like we said, the leisure centre. So it's quite a precious piece of land, really. That's it.
So obviously the committee feels strongly that these points need to be noted for future plans. Councillor Friend, do you want to make a further comment about this application?
Yes, I'm very much in sympathy with what the other councillors have said. This is a council piece of land. If we refuse planning application, I don't think they're going to appeal. So we do have a bit more freedom with it being council land. If we decide that housing is inappropriate and that the land should be used for community use, then that could be a decision we could consider.
I think that's quite tricky because we're not deciding on between them. It's yes or no for this application. Would Paul Clisby like to comment? Are you with us, Paul? I think we've lost Paul Clisby for the moment. If I go to the next question, perhaps Paul Clisby can come back to us when he's ready. It's Councillor Barr next.
Yes, I think that it's not the council that's applying for planning permission. There's an agent applying for the planning permission. What we don't know is whether the council has already sold this land or whether it is on an option to buy subject to planning permission. But this does raise a more difficult issue, which is that certainly when we were in control, and I'm sure it's carried on now, there is a list of all council property which is on the disposals list. Now, there's quite a lot of property on the disposals list that could be used for community purposes. By the time that it's come to us, then the property services have already decided that that piece of land should be disposed of for a particular purpose, and I don't think the councillors are sufficiently involved in those decisions. Now, clearly those sales are essential to keep the capital programme running because that's where the receipts go, so they would be loath to have a lot of intervention about not wanting pieces of land on the disposal list sold. But I think that the problem here is the opportunity is past now, but that piece of land will have been on the disposal list and a decision to dispose will have been taken, and it won't have been shared with councillors in general. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've just lost contact. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
That's good. And perhaps IT services can try to help me get back on. But I think the next question is coming from Tony McCarthy.
Yes, it was my second question, Chair. Again, if you can refer to page 32, the coloured photograph at the bottom of the page, it shows Cotswold Place and the path that run along the sides of the proposed area, and also the houses that have a fair size garden, etc. But on the top of page 16, the Cheshire Police have made a comment that it might, where it's a pathway, it might create an alleyway. I'm not quite sure exactly what concerns it got there, whether the officers have any views on that. On the picture it shows that there's street lights down there, so I'm not sure what the police is on. They're just singing there as creating an alleyway, so I'd be interested in people's views on that. Thank you.
Okay, Nikki, have you got any comment?
Yeah, so towards the east of the site, the Cotswold Place gets more enclosed. So you can see the side, right along the side elevation of number 19 Lancing Avenue, is the rear garden. So they've got a 2 metre high fence in that location. And on the opposite side, then in front of the bungalows, it's about probably a 1.2 metre rail fence, which we can see on the photographs. It just continues down Cotswold Place. And I think the original submission that came in, from which the police, I believe, commented, did show a fence running along Cotswold Place. So it would in effect narrow that footpath and give it more of an alley-like feel. Now, since then, officers have negotiated the scheme, so there is no enclosure in that location now, and permitted development rights have been removed. And so instead, effectively, we've put the vegetation along there to make it a pleasant environment whilst maintaining the openness of that footpath insofar as we can, as far as it relates to this application.
That's fine. Thank you for that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments that anyone wishes to make or questions? I haven't got any more on my screen.
Councillor Grime, Paul is back now.
Oh, that's good.
If you wanted to direct that question.
Graham, would you like to repeat your question to Paul?
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't really a question. I was just noting that it's council-owned land, and that if we do have a mind to refuse it for some reason, I don't think they'll be appealing. The question is has the land already been sold to the developer? I think that's the question that Councillor Barr raised, which is probably more relevant.
I don't know
Paul,
the answer.
Can you comment about how important that is? And
no, but I don't know the answer to the question. But obviously, the application has been certificated as to the owner. So I don't know whether you're planning. I don't know whether Nikki can answer that question.
Nikki?
So the application is before members because it is council-owned land, so it's retained within council ownership at the moment. So in answer to the question, the council own the land. Just to take it a step further into the discussion, the issues that were raised. So because it's council-owned land, if it was a council application, we couldn't appeal against the decision for refusal. But in this instance, the council isn't the applicant. So it's a private applicant who's made an application on council-owned land. So therefore, a decision to refuse it could be appealed. And the other thing, of course, to bear in mind is that, as we've just said, is that it would need to be material. So you're making a decision on material planning issues, and alternative uses wouldn't be one of them. I've just been informed there that it's sold subject to planning, so it's still within council ownership, but if planning consent was granted, it would be sold.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've discussed these, what are actually important issues, but side issues to this application quite thoroughly. So I think we need to come back to the application we've got. Does anyone want to comment further or ask any further questions on this particular application rather than the general principles?
Chair, I mean, obviously, yes. The meeting's still open to further comments, but having viewed it, so I know the area well, I was brought up in and around that area, I would move that the application be approved subject to the conditions attached to the application.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a question through from Councillor Wright, so do you mind if we just take Steve's comment and then we'll move to the motion? Steve?
Just a point of clarification. People can apply for planning permission, but if they don't own the land, they can't carry out that until they own the land, can they? So even if it was appealed against, it wouldn't really matter, would it? Because they don't own the land. I could put planning permission, a request in to do something on that land, and you could refuse me and I could appeal it, but I don't own the land.
Yes, that's
moot, isn't it, really?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, come on, Paul.
Yeah, so obviously we've just heard that the land, we understand that there is a contract to sale on the land, so that subject to the grant of planning permission. So clearly, if the preconditions for that contract are met, then the land is, obviously you're entitled to require the sale of the land to you if it's been contracted to be sold.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for those answers. We've got a proposal to accept the application, to approve the application. I will second that. Are there any amendments proposed to this motion?
It's Steve Parish, Chair. If I'm understanding this right, it's a private application, and therefore it will be subject to appeal. and if we refused it, we'd be going to appeal, having made a political decision not to approve a planning application, and that would be not good.
Thank you for that comment. So the motion is proposed and seconded, and I've asked for amendments and no one has replied to any. So I think Democratic Services can now take this to the vote. Jenny?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr? Councillor Barr?
For.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Carey?
For.
Councillor Flaherty?
For.
Councillor Friend?
For.
Councillor Grime?
For.
Councillor McCarthy?
For.
Councillor Morgan?
Against.
Councillor Mundry? Councillor Mundry?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Parrish?
For.
Councillor Wheeler?
For.
And Councillor Wright?
Against.
Okay, thank you. The application is approved.
Chair, you were going to say, with the note, we would prefer to see the plots of land like this be put to community use. I think you said in the middle of our discussion. Is that correct?
We said that should be noted. I didn't think that we said it should be included in the
It should be noted
decision.
on the approval, yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Can we ask Nikki if that has been noted?
Councillor Grime, I'll take that back to Estates. I'll report back to that tomorrow on that issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, if we go on to agenda item 5, that's the appeal decision summary. The report is attached to the agenda starting on page 37. 4 appeals have been decided and 3 received since the previous report. Does the planning officer wish to make any additional comment? Nikki?
No, thank you, Chair.
If any members wish to comment or ask questions about the appeal decision summary, can you indicate on the chat in the usual way? Right. We don't seem to have any comments. Are there any further points of clarification from any of the officers? Right, I propose that the appeal summary report is noted. Will you say if you have any problems with that, please? Then the report is noted. And right, someone has a question to ask. It's Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. It's a question really at the end of the meeting, Joan.
All right, so do you want me to close the meeting first?
Yes, I mean, it is relevant to
Okay.
the committee. Yeah, please. So thank you.
All right, the meeting then is closed. So if you take that off live, and then Councillor Wheeler wishes to ask a question to the committee.
Thank you. It's a question for Nikki, really. We're still getting the figure, the deficit in housing land supply of 3.7.
Councillor Wheeler,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if we are still live. I was wondering if Dale can confirm.
We are.